Welcome everyone to the Breakout Gang, the Safety Awareness in the Glass Cutting Area presentation from the Insulating Glass Manufacturers Alliance. We've got a very good safety presentation for you here today. Mike has done these, like I said, for several years. He's done multiple per year in different venues. But before we begin, we do need to talk about probably our favorite topic in the entire world, and that is IGMA antitrust guidelines. Our guidelines are right there. Basically, it comes down to we're not going to talk about any pricing here or any issues that would cross the line into antitrust. But if you feel like we are getting too close, it is your responsibility to let us know immediately and then jump on so that we can deal with it. And then if you feel like it's uncomfortable, then you can leave the presentation. But I guarantee there's a lot of other uncomfortable things in this presentation that have nothing to do with pricing or guidelines. So before we begin, let me introduce you to our presenter. Many of you already know him. He's Mike Burk. He's the chair of the IGMA Glass Safety Awareness Council, and he's presently the North American technical representative for Sparklike of Finland. So with that, Mike, I'm going to let you take over and enjoy.
All right, thanks, Brian. I'd like to welcome everybody for joining us. Obviously, you joined the seminar because you're concerned about safety, and we at IGMA appreciate that. If you weren't concerned, you obviously wouldn't have joined us today. Again, as the scope suggests for the Safety Council, our goal is to create and promote awareness of safety issues facing the insulating glass industry. At each one of our meetings, we talk about incidents, near misses, fatalities, improvements in safety, PPE, things like that, and we share those with the attendees at our meeting. We go through these things without names or companies or locations, and we want every one of our members to take that information that they gathered at that meeting back with them to their facility, back to their factory, where they can look for those same circumstances and try to fix things before somebody gets hurt. And that's really the goal here with me today is we're going to run through some things, and we're only going to look at one specific department, the glass cutting area. And again, it's not all, we have a lot to cover in a brief period, but I want you to look for situations that you see here today. And then when you're done, take a look at your own facility. You know, spend some time, walk out to the glass cutting area and look for some of these same circumstances, or just watch the choreography that's going on with the Breakout Gang. There are some really talented people that work in this department. They work fast, they work hard, they work with heavy materials, sharp materials, and they're always on the go because they're always under the demand to get production done. It doesn't seem like I go anywhere where the cutting department is too far ahead of the production area. Some places maybe a shift, but again, these people are always on the move. So we want to talk about that. We want to talk about how they have to cut the glass, break it out, sort it, get it in the right order, and get it to the IG department in a timely manner. And we're going to talk and kind of step through the process and look at each area and talk about some of the safety issues that might appear at any one of these areas. So we'll get along here. The picture on the front is an actual picture of a plant where the forklift driver picked up this rack of glass from the back. And so that little arm that you see broken off on the floor there obviously wasn't enough to secure the glass. And I'm sorry, I said it backwards. He actually picked it up from the front instead of the back. So when he picked it toward himself, it tilted towards him and moved the forklift all the way back or moved the rack back. We're not really sure. But thankfully, in this situation, nobody was hurt. We're all pretty much familiar with the standard PPE. In the North American area, in Canada and the US, we've really gotten very good at wearing PPE. Mostly when I go to Europe or overseas, I see a lack of any kind of PPE or any protection at all. But we've gotten much better. As Brian said, I've been in the industry for a long time, and it continues to get better. We get better equipment, better cut protection, resistance, and more people are realizing that they need to wear this protection all the time. So I don't have to go in and say, oh, you need to put on your safety glasses, you need to put on your safety shoes. Most everywhere you go, the people are wearing the proper PPE. In this case, the stuff on the table, the gloves, the protective jacket, the apron for waist protection. I have the lady at the top. There's some new equipment out, some new PPE out there. You get off the website, designed for smaller frame people, for ladies and smaller people, that fits tighter and closer. It's very important that it fit properly. You don't want anything that's baggy, anything that's hanging out, anything that's loose. So it's important that you don't give somebody a double XL when they're wearing a small, because it can be very hazardous. Again, the guy in the bottom right there, he's got the proper protection, and he looks pretty good. But we know that in the cutting area, you need a lot more. That's pretty good safety equipment for most everything you do in the IG area. But in the glass cutting area, you need more. And one of those biggest mores is neck protection. I don't care if it's a one-piece thing that you're wearing that has a turtle-type collar on it, or an individual collar like this, the guy on the left, or the protection that the guy on the right is wearing. But you need to have a lot more protection. There's so much more hazards that are there, like the hard hat. Often in the glass cutting department, you have glass that is above your head. Right? The face shield, in case glass splinters out, that might be a little difficult for somebody that's breaking out glass. It might be a little hard for them to work with a face shield. But again, the people loading, free falling, should have all of this gear. You see, he has the hat, the shield, the shoulder protection, the neck protection, and the waist protection in the front. You really can't see too well, but I would assume he has safety shoes on it all as well. You can always look at the situation in your plant, and if they're handling glass above their heads, I definitely recommend the neck protection, and also recommend the hard hat. We'll talk a little bit later about lacerations of the neck and how easily they can happen in this department, and how important it is to wear that neck protection. Trips and falls seem to be on the increase. We're wearing much more PPE than we used to, but I'm reading more cases of employees tripping and falling. I've got a picture of a mat there, and that's not probably the kind of mat you might see in a glass department. In most cases, they're fatigue mats, the big thick rubber ones, which are really helpful for the people that are breaking out glass. It's a long day to stand there on hard surfaces, but you have to be careful with them that the edges don't get curled up or the edges are not tapered. And you have to watch that they get damaged really quickly. Anytime they drop glass, they cut fairly easily. They're fairly soft. And so they get cut, and you end up with holes that can become a trip hazard. So you have to watch for that. Watch that the corners don't peel up, and watch for glass embedded in those soft rubber mats. It's kind of a tough issue. You want to have that anti-fatigue protection, but you don't really want to. You don't want to pay the money, but it's kind of important to look into that and find the best source for mats in that department. But also make sure that they're not damaged enough that they're not going to trip, because these guys and ladies are moving a lot. The other thing that I see a lot of are air hoses running through this department. The air hoses seem to be the tool of choice for cleaning up around the cutting table. And in fact, they don't clean up anything. They just take the glass and blow it over to some other part of the cutting department, or over to some other department. And the air hoses actually embed the glass into the carpet, which ends up with scratching. So you're taking glass bits, small shreds of glass, and blowing them around the department into other people's eyes and faces and things. So truly recommend getting rid of the air hoses. If you insist on having them, make sure they meet the OSHA standard for the amount of pressure that can come out of the end of them, because they can do some severe damage. I see them cranked all the way up, and again, that's much too pressure. You have to have the special nozzles at the end. The other thing is extension cords, especially in the summertime. It's hot, and they're always trying to position fans somewhere around the breakout table or the cutting table to cool them off a little bit. And they seem to go with a shift change. This guy liked it over here, but this person likes it over here. So you see a lot of extension cords. If not for the fans, you see it for places that offer radios. So there's always kind of got to be careful for trip hazards such as extension cords, air hoses, and even some of the ramps. Some of the equipment is designed with ramps to get you over some of these things, but any one of them can become a trip hazard. Also, something else we're becoming aware of through OSHA is the soles of their shoes. People take and make sure that they have safety shoes on, but when they wear out, they don't spend the money to actually invest in new shoes with the proper grips on the bottom. So you want to check that because, again, these people don't make a lot of money and the shoes are expensive. You might want to think about having an automatic policy, especially for these people, to make sure that when their boots are worn or their shoes are worn, that they have some kind of replacement policy so they don't trip and fall. If you've looked at glass sorting racks and you look at all the glass standing on end there, just imagine the horror of tripping and falling into one of those racks. And again, as you go out there and look at this plant, take a look at the people and how fast they're moving to keep up and just eliminate any trip hazards that you might see. On top of that, we make it a little more difficult on them. We have this thing called glass interleaving powder. Back in the day, there were some papers, and this powder is designed to stop the glass from sticking together. A common name that we see out there in the industry a lot is Lucor, and that's what a lot of people call it. But down to the bottom right is a little sketch of how this stuff is actually put onto the glass as it leaves the float line. After it cools, it sprinkles the Lucor on the glass, and it drops it on. So when they stack it right after it's cut, that it doesn't stick together. So it's interleaving powder or Lucor. But the problem is that once you free fall the glass, or even if you have a loader or anything like that, that Lucor powder ends up on the floor, and it's marbles. Honest to God, I learned it easy in my younger days when I went tooling around the corner and my feet went faster than I did, and I again fell on that. So it's marbles, and it's designed to make things move and not stick. So you'll see in some of the pictures as I go through here that underneath loaders, underneath glass racks, anywhere in the department, you'll see that little white haze of Lucor that tends to get built up. It's difficult to clean up. It's difficult to sweep up. Kind of recommend that you vacuum it up as you can, but try to get it and limit it into the department. Think about moving glass racks. Think about how heavy they are. I mean, 2,000 pounds of glass on a rack, and you're trying to push that with slippery shoes with bad soles. Again, it can be very dangerous. If you have the option, look into motorized vehicles, those small, almost like motorized pallet jacks that are able to move these racks around, because they are so heavy and the floor is just so slippy. So take a look again at trips and falls. Try to make sure there's nothing extra. Cords, hoses, ramps, Lucor, scrap, trash, anything that might cause somebody to slip and fall, because there's so much glass hanging around that they could fall into. Talk a little bit about loading and free fall. There's some old pictures here, some old black and white pictures that we have that one of my friends gave me here. And you look at the guy on the left, and he's standing in between that glass. He's got nothing, no PPE, no hard hat, no protection at all. If that glass should shear, he is stuck. He's only got, looks like, one way out, and there's just no protection at all. But worse yet, look at the guys on the right. Look at the guy in the bottom. I mean, again, if that glass should fall, unless he's really quick, and it doesn't appear that he has gloves, any PPE at all, and we need to prevent that. We want to make sure that doesn't happen to anybody. And you think, well, these are old pictures, Mike. They don't do that anymore. Things are much better these days, but not necessarily so. Look at these guys on the top left here. They almost look like mimes to me because you can't see the glass. But I can't tell if they're wearing gloves, but there's three of them. If you're handling large lights, you want to maybe have two, one on each end, and carry it so that if it did fall, you could step out of the way and it could fall away from you. In this case, if it falls towards the guy in the middle, he doesn't have much of an escape route at all. And then the guy on the left, he's wearing shorts. Again, I know it's hot, but you can't wear shorts in the glass department. It's just too big of a risk for cutting. And the guys down in the bottom picture in the middle there, same kind of thing. They're not doing bad, That's an awfully large light to lift but 2 men. And we'll talk a little bit later about some restrictions or some policies that you have to define is how big of a light can people lift? How big of an IG unit can one man lift? How many does it take 2 and how many does it take 3? And when do you need to bring mechanical equipment into play and not rely on this? If that glass should shear, one bump against the metal on that rack or one flaw in the edge and that glass should run. Again, it's an incredibly dangerous situation. The man on the right-hand side can consider the size and weight of that glass, and he doesn't appear to have anything. He may have some gloves on, but he doesn't appear to have any protection at all. If that glass, that strap should break, any part of that strap should break and that glass would come out, he would not have much of a chance to escape. Always make sure that when you do this kind of handling of glass, that you secure the area that nobody can come through there. In one plant I worked at was a common walkway that was normally used by a lot of the people. But when it came to loading glass, that walkway was blocked off with cones, with flashing beacons and chains, and nobody was allowed to go through there. They had to walk all the way around to the other side to go in the other door, or even go outside to get to the other door to make sure they didn't get in the way of the person loading this glass. His mind is on that pack, and can't be distracted by people cutting through. Also consider another person here. I mean, he not only is trying to operate the crane and the hoist, he's also trying to steer that package. And so if look at your policies regarding lifting these large packs of glass, establish zones where nobody can go, establish the gear. I mean, this man needs a hard hat, he needs neck protection, and also consider having somebody else there to help him so that he can operate the crane while somebody else can steer that glass weight around. Free falling. I don't know if everybody's familiar with the guy on the left here, but those E-guards, there's like an E-shaped guard that goes on the end of the glass racks when they're free falling. Very important, and I go to a lot of places where they don't have these E-guards. Most people make their own. They're either made out of plywood, in this case metal, and some other stuff. But the fear is here that as you free fall that glass, that light you're free falling, if the one behind it is broke or cracked, it could come out sideways at you. You could just rotate right out the side and come right in your face. And if you spend any time on the glass floor at all, you've seen people free fall glass. They kind of get it started and they back up away so in case it does break, they don't get hurt. Well, you don't ever want to back up in the glass department. There's no need to ever back up, especially like that, stepping back quickly. You don't know what might be behind you. The glass is always moving. But invest in those E-guards on both sides so that when the glass is free falling, if the glass behind it is broken, it doesn't come out sideways towards the operator. You also want to think about the glass pack themselves when they come in. Do you inspect them as they arrive and look for broken glass as far as you can see? I mean, it's difficult to see if there's broken glass 3 or 4 lights back or more, but if you inspect it for damage, do you not use it? Do you wrap it back up and send it back to the supplier? Do you notify the shipping company? Or in some cases, if this guy would free fall a light and the next 3 are broken, they'll just take and let those broken pieces fall on the floor. They'll keep going through the pack till they actually get a good piece and accumulate a whole pile of broken glass on the floor, which is extremely dangerous, even more dangerous when they go to remove it later. If you find a piece of broken glass or a bad pack, take it up off the base, pick it up with a forklift, tie it down, secure it, and move it to some area where it's safe, where you can easily work to remove the broken glass. Don't try to do it there at the cutting table in a very small space where you're going to have a lot of glass falling on the floor. The other issue that we see with loading and free falling is people looking for a specific light of glass. So often the free fall table or the loader will have all the popular glass, but you get an order for something special. I need one of these, and I only need one. I just need to make a few cuts and a few lights out of this specialty glass, so I'm not going to move all my rack bases to get it in there. I'm just going to take one over and carry it over there and slide it in. And we know of at least one man who died doing that. The 2 of them carried the light. They tried to squeeze it in between the rack bases and the free fall racks. They hit the edge of the table and it sheared and cut the one gentleman in the neck, and he died 10 minutes later. So you need to actually go and move the rack glass, put the right one in place, and then free fall it as normal. There's a practice that I see a lot, and it's called, I call it tipping. And they'll get a guy to actually start to hold the glass. In the first light, hold it up. I only need to go a few back. But with each additional light, it gets heavier and heavier until they can't hold it anymore, and it falls on them. I'm going to show you a video in this next slide, and some of you have seen it before because I've shown it at the IGMA before, but it's troubling. It is really troubling, but it's powerful. It's a very small glass plant, and it looks like it's not in the States, but you can see in the slide there that it's a little crowded. There's no real way to escape. There's glass stacked up everywhere. And you can see they've already tipped, 10 or 20 lights towards this group of men holding it up. And again, if you're timid, there's no blood in this, but I want you to see this. Again, it's quite troubling, but take a look at it here. Help, Brian. There it goes. Again, as they add each light, it finally gets too heavy for them to hold it up. And those guys are trapped into that glass, just looking at the size and estimating it and trying to guess that glass weighs around 160 pounds per square foot. I would guess there's about 6,000 pounds of glass trapping those men between the glass and the table. And you just start to see the people come in, you'll realize how much weight is there and how difficult it is for them to get this glass off of those individuals. Again, more help. I think I counted 15 people finally coming in to help lift that glass. None of them with any safety gear, all pushing against the raw edges of glass and broken glass. And then you kind of somewhat about their first aid training is the one injured man he picks up here and tries to get him off the table and then puts him back down. Again, incredibly sad. And the only thing to take from this is if you can, I believe this presentation will be available on our website afterwards, show this to your factory people and never, ever allow them to do glass tipping. I don't care if it's for one light or half a light. Pick up each light that's in the way, move it to another rack, secure it so it can't fall, and repeat the process until you get to the one that you want. Again, it's always heavier than it looks, and it tends to build really quickly. So please, again, no tipping, no glass tipping at all. I think everybody in your glass department should see this video sometime or another. Another thing that I want to talk about a little bit here is glass storage. This picture on the left, I actually watched two carriers carry that large circular piece of glass from another location in the plant with tennis shoes on, and they carried it from that far end over that L rack, stepped over that, stepped onto had their feet in between the rack base and the open slots, and carried that large light in there and set it down and went back about their business. Never tied it down, never secured it. And you got to be really careful with that. Make sure that you have access. Make sure you have clear access. If you're handling large lights like this, make sure that they have the right PPE, safety shoes. They're not walking a great distance backwards. I've seen people carrying large lights so heavy that they had to set it down to rest. They set it on their shoes. Rather than getting the right cart or rack and wheeling it where it needed to go, you need to establish some policies in your plant that this is what you pick up. This is what you're allowed to transport. And you must have clear aisleways to get that glass in there. Again, they went through a tight space there with a large lighted glass, round, difficult to grasp, and they walked the one guy walking backwards into that space. Incredibly dangerous. The second picture to the right is one of the glass areas where they have the racks for their different types of glass, and they're all at different angles. They're all kind of packed in there, and you tend to wonder, how do they get to the one they need? Do they have to move 3 or 4 out of the way to get to the one they need? This area should be fairly organized. Actual parking spaces where each type of glass goes in the right slot. You don't have to move 3 or 4 to get to the one that you want. They're heavy. They're difficult to push. And if you look at the floor there, you'll see there's scrap and I would guess some white powder, which appears to be Lucor. So that the floor situation is very, very slippy. It's tight. And again, every time they need that one rack in the back, they got to move 2 to get to it. It's nice to see they have E-guards on the side, but that's not enough in this case. You want to make sure the glass is secured so when they move it, it doesn't fall. And you want to sweep up that floor so that they don't slip. As I mentioned earlier, make sure they have some good shoes on through the whole thing. And what's even more concerning to me in this picture is the pallet jack on the bottom left. Let's hope they weren't trying to pick up those glass racks with that small pallet jack. God forbid. The number of people that have been injured trying to pick large loads up with pallet jacks. The breakout and sorting guys or ladies. In this case, the guy on the left, he decided to modify his PPE. He was a little hot, so he cut off the back of his gloves. He doesn't wear the thumb hole thing where it belongs, but he's got his watch on there and he's got them pushed up. So his wrists are exposed. And you could say that in this picture, yeah, he's only got some small lights there, nothing really dangerous there. But again, he modified the PPE. And you can't permit that because the next light he picks up may be larger or more dangerous. I know the gloves get hot and they get sweaty, but have an extra pair so you can swap them out once in a while and let them cool off. Got a guy in the bottom right is doing a much better job. You can see he's got the proper protection, shoulders and arms, wrist protection, got the cut-resistant gloves. He's breaking out that glass with an upward and an outward movement, which looks pretty good, and he's got the waist protection. So it looks like he's got the right idea. The bottom left is a harp rack that I saw in a plant, and it was like that for 3 days. Somewhere along the line, the glass broke on the slot sorting rack there, and nobody wanted to clean it out, so they just let it sit there. You got to watch the condition of your slot sorting racks. You got to make sure they're clean. Some are plastic or hard plastic, some are wood. But if there's small pieces of glass in there, it can be very difficult to slide the glass into the racks. And if you have difficulty sliding them in, you may cause the glass to break, you may cause it to stick, harming the operator. You need to have a policy for cleaning and inspecting those racks, preferably after each use, maybe at least once a shift. But after they leave the assembly area and they come back to cutting, they should be cleaned out, inspected and cleaned. Here we go with the air hoses again. I see some places where they simply take an air hose and blow that glass shreds all over the place. One place took them outside, which was a lot of work, but at least they were clean and they were safe. But you need to check to make sure that there's no broken glass, which would damage the glass, cause edge damage, or stop the lights from sliding in safely. And you need to do it on a regular basis. Don't wait till they start to stick. The other thing you want to think about here is how many lights of glass do you let them carry? The guy at the right here gets done. How many lights is he allowed to carry over to the sorting racks? Some places allow one light in each hand, where they try to slide it into the racks with just one hand, which can be difficult. Sometimes you'll see them doing like a pancaking thing where they'll have a lot of smaller lights and they'll break them off and stack them up and carry more than 2 in one hand. Keep in mind that the glass is still covered with Lucor and it's still trying to slip and move around, and it's still difficult to grasp and hold tight. So you need to define how many glasses there are, how many trips they can make. I prefer one. I know it takes a little longer, it's a lot more steps, but you can slide a light into the slot sorting racks a lot easier with 2 hands than you can with one. So look at that, consider what works best for your company. Also look at whether you have more than one or two breakout guys. I mean, some places you'll have two, one on the side here, one on the end. And they're both breaking out glass, and it's almost like a synchronized team. They work so well together, they don't get in each other's way, and they pass each other and able to speed up the sorting process. But look at that and how that works in your facility. Look at how many harp racks or sorting racks you have around the cutting table. Look how far away they are, and look at again, how many you're using. I know you get some better optimization if you have a bigger batch, but that may result in a lot more racks and a lot more movement. But take a walk out to that line and take a look at that process and watch how they do it, and watch for instances where that might not be safe. Scrap disposal. We always have scrap. Hopefully not like the picture on the top left where the vast majority of that light is going into the dumpster. It had to be some kind of special remake there. But if you've watched the people with the scrap process, it also is incredibly dangerous. If you look at the dumpster on the right at the top, there's no guarding around it at all. So that if you throw the glass into that dumpster, a lot of it's going to ricochet right back out of the dumpster. And you can see that on the floor. So depending upon how the department is secured, I'm not going to say that. That's not acceptable. The one down below at the same facility has some guards around the back. Again, if they overthrow the glass or overshoot the glass, it does enable it, stop it from going into another department. Now the bottom left, that's a little better. The guy's throwing it into that, and it's pretty well guarded. But you want to look at the dumpsters. You want to look at the guarding around them. You want to minimize the throwing action. You actually, if possible, place it in there. I know that's difficult. I know I'm in a dream world, but to not throw it across the room. I want to read to you real quickly here the actual quote from an OSHA report. I think we're all familiar with trim cuts. People will make a 1-inch trim cut along two edges of the glass to assure squareness. In this case, they had two trim cuts. And the report says after the CNC cutting table had scored the glass, the victim broke off a 1-inch by 6 foot and a 1-inch by 7 foot strip of glass. The victim had first disposed of the 1-inch by 6 foot piece into a metal dumpster, which is located near the CNC cutting table. The victim was attempting to dispose of the 1-inch by 7 foot piece of glass into a metal dumpster when it hit something, broke into a 1-inch by 24-inch piece, and struck the victim in the neck, and he died. Now you think, well, a 1-inch by 24 inches is not a very big piece of glass, but it ricocheted back and it caught him in the neck, and he died. Now you've seen this. If you do trim cuts, you see this. They like to throw the trim cuts kind of like swords. They're almost like a magical water fountain as they disappear into the dumpster. It's really cool, but you got to stop that. You actually have to stop them from throwing glass or throwing it very far. Walk over and put it in. I know it's going to slow them down a bit, but it's really something you have to do. I'm going to show you two quick video clips here. They're very quick. They're only a few seconds. But the first one here is from a customer. And this is one of the training videos they created for their employees before they went to work in the cutting department. And this is what not to do. If you look at this guy, he's got no shoulder protection, head protection, neck protection. It looks like he might have some tennis shoes on. And I'll play this real quick, but it is real quick. But this is not how to get disposed of. Try that one more time. It's not quite as smooth as when you see it in person, but he's actually just taking the glass. She says go. She gives him the word here. He just throws it, and it goes so fast. Again, so try to get out of that habit of throwing the glass, especially over a distance that big. This dumpster is pretty well guarded. It's fairly safe. It's out of the way. Always keep in mind that you have to empty these things. So the guards have to be movable, and you have to have access without disrupting the entire production line. But really take a look at the location of your dumpsters, especially if you have more than one operator. Here's their second video. Notice this is the how-to video. The guy has the hard hat. In this company, they have a hood around the back of their neck as well as neck protection. You can see that he has arm protection as well as full apron and safety shoes. And again, it'll probably play a little slow here, but this would be the best way to do it, is actually to take it over and place it in the dumpster. I know that's against all the norms of most people these days. Okay. Maintenance. I cannot talk enough about maintenance. At the last IGM meeting, I spent a big part of the Safety Awareness Council talking about the role of maintenance guys in safety. These are the guys that know the equipment better than anybody. They should be a big part, if not in charge of your safety committees. They know how the machines are supposed to run. They know the lockout tagout of all the energy sources. You know, the power, the electric, the air, the pneumatics, any stored energy. These guys know where it is. And they should be the ones familiar with lockout tagout and the ones able to truly make sure that they're locked out. Now, sadly, that's not always the case. This past year, we had a maintenance guy that went into a machine and had the key closed behind him and told him to start it up while he made some adjustments. So maintenance guys aren't perfect, but they know. And in the case of this guy, he was actually trapped and crushed as a maintenance guy working on powered up equipment. On the left, again, don't ever try to defeat any kind of alarm or system. If you have to put a paper clip in the alarm reset to hold it, something is obviously wrong. Call maintenance, get it fixed. Something is not operating the way it should, and somebody could get hurt. So again, can't stress enough the importance of regular maintenance, not to mention cases where you haven't had any maintenance for a very long time. And this free fall table has not seen new carpet for a very long time. And you go, well, Mike, it's not a safety issue, it's a quality issue. Yeah, it is. You're going to have a lot of scratched glass. You're going to have a lot of glass embedded into that wood. But also when you go to transfer it, the glass is not going to transfer easily or evenly across that wood. It may stick, it may break, making that transfer. So you want to make sure that the tabletops are clean and even and the glass transfers easily. If the glass shears on transfer, it's hard to tell who could get hurt. The picture on the right for the controls on the cutting bridge, the oiler and the glass cutting pressure. Again, this table has not seen maintenance for a very long time, and they're getting by with it, and it's kind of wired up there. And you got to be really careful with that. The simple case, in this case, if the cutting head wasn't adjusted right, it came off the edge of the glass and went down to the carpet. When the bridge moved home, it would take that glass and shove it anywhere, wherever direction the bridge is going, and that could be towards the operator, it could be anywhere, but it's going to actually take and move that glass around. Don't tolerate this kind of equipment setup. It's just going to get somebody hurt. I mean, if it's that kind of bad, shut it down, lock it out until it's fixed. E-stops, light curtains, and gates. If you look at this gate here into a glass storage area, there's no safeties. There's no interlock. There's no nothing. And the operator could be far away from this source. If you've got this kind of situation, it has to be interlocked. So when the gate is opened, the machine shuts down and nobody gets hurt. So again, when you take that walk out to your cutting area after this presentation, look for situations like that. The top right, light curtains, don't ever try to defeat them. Make sure they work. I've actually seen people duck under them so they could defeat them and get to a piece of stuck glass, things like that. Make sure your emergency stops work. Make sure they're tested on a regular basis. Make sure they're accessible and you don't have a glass rack parked in front of them. And I can't stress enough, lockout, tagout. There was an incident where a guy went up on a cutting table to vacuum it off. He actually decided not to use an air hose. So he was actually on the cutting portion of the system and he was vacuuming the top and the cutting bridge went home. I'm not sure if it was a machine malfunction or if actually another operator hit the button to send the cutting bridge home, but it knocked him over and broke both of his legs. So simple acts of anything that you're doing, lock it out, tag it out, and make sure that all these light curtains in emergency situations are working properly. I did a lot of research on traffic through the cutting area. And I had a lot of pictures of aisles and marked aisles and big striped areas and plastic chains and guards and things like that that attempted to keep people out. But it still didn't seem to stop them. The person comes in with a special order. I need this glass cut right away. You need to go out of sequence. And they talk to the breakout people and interrupt them while they're there. They may just come by and say, hi, how you doing? Talk about their kids, talk about sports, whatever. But I found this sign to be the best indication for that area. Restricted area, no visitors beyond this point. And that includes anybody but the operators and maybe the foreman or the group leader, but nobody should be in that area other than the breakout people. All right, and signs like this posted and enforced that nobody comes into that breakout area that doesn't belong there. I was in one plant and they were having a lunch. They actually sat down on the breakout table, about 6 of them. That was their lunch table. Again, this area is just too dangerous. There's too much going on. There's automated machinery. Nobody, again, should be in this area. So I like the sign, restricted area, no visitors beyond this point. And your policy, your safety policy, should be sure that anybody that violates this restriction gets properly notified and taken care of. But again, I thought this said a lot more than any painted aisle or any painted sign. I'd like to leave you just here with a few documents. The one is the ASTM standard 2875. It's a standard guide for personal protective equipment for the handling of flat glass. And it's I can't show you the whole thing. I can't give you that. You got to go off the ASTM and buy it off their website. But a couple of things that I like about it, it would help you develop a safety guide just for the cutting area. I'm sure you have plant-wide training programs, plant-wide safety. But again, the cutting area is a very special area. It needs its own special safety policy. And I like in this case here that the standard defines certain terms that you should be standard in actually using. And it also describes test methods for measuring cut resistance. So if you get a chance, take a look at the standard, buy it online, and make sure you have it in your plant. But use it as a base. Use it as the beginning for your glass cutting area, the policy. Let this be the base and then build upon that depending upon your plant, your facility, your equipment, and your people. The other one I'd like to offer to you is this one that was developed by a glass manufacturer, and they were kind enough to release it to the entire industry. But this is a chart on the manual handling of glass. And what they've done is they've taken this chart, and it's a 3-page chart, and it actually breaks down by size and by thickness. So if you go down to the left side, you can see the different sizes of glass, and across the top is the thicknesses of glass. And the color coding tells you whether it's a solo lift is permitted, a team lift is required, a 3-person or mechanical aid is required, or just a pure the red, just a pure mechanical aid is required. I have this. If you email me at the end of this presentation, I'll be glad to send this to you. They did a lot of work and a lot of research to come up with this chart. Again, and it's based on not only size as well as thickness of the glass. I think this is fabulous. Everybody ought to have this posted somewhere and enforced in their glass facility. And it's available. If you let me know, I'll be glad to send it to you. My 45 minutes is just about up, so I'd like you to stay safe as always. If you have any questions, if I can help, or if anyone at IGMA can offer any assistance, please email me and let us know. As we said all along, we want everybody to go home well in one piece at the end of their shift every day. Everybody deserves that, especially the guys in the breakout gang. Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, Mike, we've had a few questions that came in during the presentation. The first one is what do you suggest for plants that don't have AC or it's too humid and hot all the time, especially when it comes to PPE and, just the kind of the heaviness or the weightiness of PPE?
Well, again, there's not too much you can do other than rotate them. A lot of the plants I go to, they have, when it gets to a certain temperature, they'll offer more breaks more often. They'll have Igloo coolers full of ice water available throughout the plant, even in the cutting area, so they can hydrate themselves quite a bit. And places where they have popsicles, again, to cool their body heat down. But you don't want to get to the point where you start taking off the safety gear. Just about that time when you do, something's going to happen. So, yeah, it's heavy and it's hot. And again, the only thing you can do is fans, rotate the staff, give them a break, let them get out of there a little more often than normal. And also always keep them hydrated with something cool.
Cool beans. How do you feel about collar safety guards for crane operators?
For the crane, like in the picture, the guy with the heavy squishback, absolutely. Again, they need neck protection. Anytime glass is above their heads or above their shoulders, I see neck protection on hard hats, shoulder protection. It's I don't have the statistics, but I keep all the reports of fatalities, and so many of we don't see as many fatalities from lacerations as we first did years ago. But the ones we do see are more of their necks. Everybody's got the arm and wrist down pretty good, but the necks are vulnerable, and you've got some very large arteries in your neck, and you've got about 10 minutes before you bleed out. And it's tough to put any kind of pressure or control on the bleeding there. So I'm a big fan of neck protection. Early on when I got into this, I was into hockey goalie neck protection. Hockey goalies have a little dicky thing they wear, and it keeps their necks protected from skating blades, and even that would be better than what I see. A lot of the new shirts, a lot of the new protective tops or long sleeve shirts come with a higher neck, which is helpful. And some of them may have a wearable pad in the front, so when the front gets off, wears out, you can just replace the front and not have to replace the entire shirt because they're so expensive. But yeah, they're hot, and but yeah, neck protection wherever possible.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate your time today, Mike. You did a great job again.
Thank you. Again, it's a passion, and I think everybody getting signed into this, thank you. You obviously have the same passion, and if we can be of any assistance, please let us know.
Absolutely. You guys see his email address right there, mike.burk@sparklike.com. Believe me, this man will work tirelessly to find answers or to seek information when it comes to safety. It is quite the passion with Mike. So thank you all for tuning in today. The recording of this is going to go live on our website very, very soon at igmaonline.org. We encourage all of you to share it with as many people in the industry as you can, with coworkers, employees, and such. We just feel like it will help kind of hit home when it comes to the importance of the safety issue in this industry. So with that, we wish everyone has a great afternoon and have a good work week. All right, everyone.
Stay safe, everybody.